Excited to have you guys all here today. And it's a big day. So I know historically I've always done the weekly catch ups on what's going on in the industry from real estate and finance and everything like that. But today I have the great pleasure of introducing, I would now say, a friend and a mentor of mine. Um, he's a bull rider, but he's taken two companies public. He's led major trainings for Microsoft, Orbitz, Oracle, you name it. Entirely revamped all of their training programs. More recently, and this is the one that I really enjoy the most. He actually ate McDonald's for 100 straight days, and no, he wasn't the super size me guy. He was actually like the shrink me guy. He ended up losing 83 pounds or something like that, and in 100 days. And some amazing stories on Good Morning America, all the talk shows, etc. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Kevin McGinnis here today. Kevin, how are you doing?
Dan, I'm doing really good. Thanks for that. It was not 85, it was 58. It was close, right? 58 pounds in 100 days. But yeah, it's funny. I've been training, developing leaders at the highest level for the last 30 years. No real notoriety. You eat a half a Big Mac on TikTok and you become world famous. It is nuts.
Isn't that great? Don't you just love how things go viral for the stupidest of reasons? But I mean, hey, I wouldn't say this is stupid. It was a nice, healthy decision by you.
Hey, 100 days of nothing but McDonald's and losing almost 60 pounds in the process. Triglycerides got better by 200 points. Cholesterol went down by 65 points. A1Cs, I was pre-diabetic, now I'm not. So every way you can measure someone healthier after 100 days of nothing but McDonald's. We'll talk more about that as we go. But it was a fun little experiment to see whether or not it was what we were eating or how much we were eating.
That really is impressive. Yes. I think if you ever do this again, I'd like for you to do it on Chick-fil-A, just because it's I think it's better tasting, anyways. But to each their own. But hey, I know we're not going to talk about McDonald's the entire time, although I could definitely do that, and I'm now starting to develop a craving because I didn't eat my breakfast yet today. So I want to set this conversation up for our audience here, and to give everybody kind of a background. I'm a business owner. I've gotten connected with Kevin over the years. He's been a really strong financial coach for me. And he's walked me through a lot of things to think differently versus what is the norm. And so one of the things that I've started thinking about as a business owner, and I want to help support my people, is how can I make sure that I'm not just setting up myself and my family for a great financial future, but for the people I care most about in my company, which are my employees. And so as a result of that, Kevin's been doing a lot of education for me. And I thought it might be most valuable to have a conversation, ask some tough questions that I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask in the future anyways. So why don't I just do it now so that hopefully it can save you time in getting to that financial goal in the future for whatever that goal might be. So Kevin, is that all right if I just pepper you with endless amounts of questions today?
Wired, fired, inspired, glazed, dazed, and amazed. I'm looking forward to it. Let's go.
All right. So I want to start on a big one that's really been kind of on my mind a lot. I came from the corporate world, spent a lot of years at, P&G, Berkshire Hathaway, Nike. And, I was sold into this idea of 401ks. And I did a good job, maxing out those 401ks, not just getting the company match. I was putting everything in there. So I'm happy from that standpoint. But then some reality set in when I started doing a little bit more research and I started learning about things like a tax-free retirement account and things like that. Maybe you could better verbalize the tax-free retirement account, what that really is, how that compares against a 401k. I think that might just be a good way to kind of start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely want to get to that. I think maybe understanding a 401k first so we can contrast and compare. Let me share how a 401k really works, give you the truth about a 401k.
Yeah.
And then let's piggyback from that onto what are some of the options, alternatives that might be out there. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So in looking at what is a 401k, how does a 401k actually work? What's the truth about that? We have our paycheck. We have our gross dollars versus our net dollars. So
Yep.
they say, hey, we're going to let you use your gross dollars. We're going to let you use your pre-tax dollars to fund this account called a 401k. And little known fact, when you're like, well, why do they call it a 401k or a 403b for teachers and doctors? Because it's on page 401 of the tax code, subsection K. It's literally a page number.
Yep.
Fun fact, but anyhow, when you put the money into the 401k, you're choosing some mutual funds inside of that you have no idea where you're going to end up later on because it's a variable account. You look at variable in the dictionary: unstable, unsecure, unreliable. If you're going to buy a car for your kids, do you want to buy a variable car, unstable, unsecure, unreliable? That may not get you to your destination. And unfortunately, as we're seeing now, as a bunch of baby boomers have now hit retirement, just by the way, the 401k has only been around for a little over 50 years.
Mhm.
So you have these people who are just now starting to see whether or not there's money in it. Well, what happens when you have a 2002, a 2008, a 2022 right before you retire, and 20, 30, 40% of your money is gone the day before, because it's a variable account? You have no clue how much money you're going to have when you get there. So you have this concept of, but it's taxed later. I'm not gonna pay taxes now. I'm gonna pay taxes later on that
Yep.
account. Well, what if we take out money prior to 59 and a half? We're going to get a 10% penalty, plus, depending on what state we're in, we're going to pay the taxes. Why are we having this penalty? Because it's not our money,
Yeah.
it's theirs. What do you mean theirs, Kevin? Take the word theirs, cut it in half. Your money, because you haven't paid the taxes on it, it still belongs to the IRS. It's
Yeah.
still theirs. It's not yours because you haven't paid the taxes on it yet. So you get the 10% penalty plus federal and state. You could lose 50% of your money as soon as you touch that money. Or if you're like, you know what, things are going good. I'm doing some consulting. I don't need to retire at 65. I love what I'm doing. I'm just going to go ahead and let the money in my 401k pass on to the next generation. Nope, not going to do that either, because the 73 rule for RMDs, required minimum distribution, kicks in. So if you don't start pulling money out at 73, you get up to a 50% excise tax for not touching your money. You're getting penalized for not, because they never got their taxes on it. They're gonna get their taxes, so they're like, hey, if you don't take the money out, we're gonna force you. Required minimum distributions, we're gonna force you to take that money out.
Yeah.
But even if you hit the sweet spot, even if you retire, let's say at 65, you're still only avoiding the 10% penalty. That's the only thing you're getting rid of at that point. But let me ask you a question: taxes. We just spent $6 trillion on COVID. Do you think taxes are going down, staying the same, or possibly going up in the future?
Oh man. I mean, with the amount of debt our government has, I'm not very optimistic on taxes ever going down. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it's probably going to go up.
And there's actually a lot of indicators in this. By the way, if you've never looked at the national debt calculator, we won't have
Yep.
time to go through that today, but that's a fun one to look at. The national debt clock, and it shows you real time how fast our debt is growing. But
Yeah.
on top of that, it shows that the three major expenditures of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the interest we have to pay on our trade deficit of $30 trillion, right? That debt, those three line items alone by 2035 will be greater than all current tax revenue. So it doesn't matter who's in office, Congress will no longer be able to kick the can down the road. They will be forced to either reduce government spending or raise taxes. Those are the two options.
Yeah.
Of those two options, I wonder what they're going to do. Are they
Yeah.
going to
Right.
reduce everyone's paying government, or are they probably just going to go ahead and kick the taxes up a little bit? Here's the reality. In 1978, if you were in the top tax bracket, you paid 70% in taxes. 70%. People say, oh, taxes are terrible. They're out of control. Dude, we're in historically low. You make $10 million a year. The worst tax bracket you're in is 37%. We're the only industrialized country on the planet that has a less than 50% top tax bracket.
Yeah.
So yeah, the historical facts show that when Ronald Reagan was making movies, he would only make 2 movies a year because he got paid about 125,000 a year. Anything more than that, he would be taxed at a 94% tax bracket. California would take another 6%. Nancy would be left with nothing. So
Yeah.
she'd only allow him to make 2 movies a year because otherwise 100% of any money he was making
Huh.
over that would all go to taxes. So when people say, oh, they won't raise taxes that much, we have a historical precedent of them raising taxes that
Yeah.
much. So when we do a 401k, we're kicking the can down the road to pay taxes at a later, potentially much higher tax bracket.
Huh.
So let's just use a simple example. If you bought a bag of seeds for $100, you planted those seeds in the ground, you had a $5,000 harvest, but the guy selling you the seeds says you have a choice. You can pay tax on the $100 seeds, or you have to pay tax on the $5,000 harvest, but not just one harvest. Year after year after year, every time you take a $5,000 harvest out of that field, you're going
Yeah.
to pay taxes at an unknown future, potentially much higher tax bracket. Silly question. Would you rather pay taxes on the harvest over and over again or pay it one time on the seed?
Oh, absolutely on the seeds, and so then that begs a question though of we have the Roth um, accounts out there, and I know there's
Correct.
you can do backdoor conversions of Roth and things like that. Is that what kind of you're suggesting here? Is there something that's an improvement above even the Roth that has now become more available in more recent years?
Yeah, so definitely Roth is a piece of the puzzle. It's a part of the option, one of the options that are available. But we're going to go through a couple options today that, quite frankly, the nickname would be rich person's Roth because you have income limits on Roth IRAs,
Yeah.
but you still have full market risk. So when you put money into a Roth IRA, if the market drops 20, 30, 40%, what happens to your account? Right? Yeah, so the ability to actually plan. Why do they tell you when you go to retire? Why do they say, hey, don't take more than 4% of your money out any
Yep.
given year? Why do they say that that's the number that they recommend is 4%? Because they have you in an account that has complete variability, has unknown how much market risk you're going to take over
Yeah.
time. It's not if you're going to take it, it's how much market risk you're going to lose to. But you're also in a tax later vehicle, and tax rates can change. So
Yep.
how in the world can a financial professional tell you what the empirical number is that you need to save for retirement? Let's say that they do an analysis and they say, hey, Dan, in your situation, for you to have your lifestyle, you need to have $2 million set aside at retirement. That is a guess at best if you're in variable accounts and tax later accounts, because both of those two things can change. What if I told you there's a way to structure your accounts to eliminate the variability to where you could actually get guarantees of never losing a dime on your money and have it grow tax free, take it out tax free? You eliminate those two variabilities. Now you actually can get to your FIN number. Your FIN. See, most people know their Social Security number. Almost nobody knows their FIN number, their financial independence number. How much money do you really need to have? Well, when you structure your accounts correctly, you can get the empirical number, the number that actually, if you have that much money, you know you're going to be able to live on that income because
Yeah.
there's no variability on the dropping of the value of your account. And there's no, if they double taxes and you're at a 0% tax bracket, 0 times 2 is still 0.
Yeah.
So, what are some of these other options? Let me kind of run through a couple of the ways that people structure their accounts. Let's just kind of go into how most people set aside money, and then what are some of these options that they
Yeah.
can actually use. Share my screen out again here.
Yeah, and I'd also love, I
Good.
know you hit on some things like guarantees there. So I jotted it down to make sure we cover that because I also want to understand how can we do guarantees because I'm really familiar of like, well, guarantees sounds too good to be true. So
Yeah.
I've parking
Well,
lotted that though. Let's hit that. I don't want to stop you from what you're going to show me right now.
no, but this is going to lead right into that. What the concept I'm about to share with you is how do you get guarantees on your money? And guarantees almost sound too good to be true.
Hmm.
If you don't have guarantees on your money of not losing it now, either the people you hang out with know about it and they're not sharing it with you, or they don't know about it either.
Yep.
Of the two, I think the latter is probably more likely. But let's find out. Let's kind of run through this concept.
Okay.
So first of all, just look at general banking. When you, as an individual, put money in the bank, The bank does not leave that money sitting there collecting dust. They don't put a bow on it saying this is Dan's money, no one else touch it. They immediately place that money with third party companies. They're getting a 10% return on your money while they pay you a tenth of a percent. Bank of
Yep.
America, right now, you have $1 million in your Bank of America savings account, you're making about a tenth of a percent in
Yep.
interest. 1/10, which means if you do the math on it, that they're making 100 times more interest than they're paying you on your money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't begrudge anyone making a profit. I'm all for, if you provide a service, you should be profitable, right? First rule of business: be profitable so you can stay in business.
Yeah.
But gouging your clients, I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of. And no one's probably put that fine of a point on it for the audience that's listening in right now. How does it feel knowing the bank is making 100 times more interest than they're giving us?
Yeah. That's man. I don't want to say it's greedy, but it does sound kind of crazy.
Well,
Um,
let's take a look. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I mean, hey, I'd love if my savings account could at least be higher than that. I know there's some out there that are even floating near 4%, but still, even if it's
Correct.
4%, which is a lot higher than this point one, they're still taking a lot of arbitrage.
Well, a
And
lot of arbitrage, but also when you're getting that 4%, what's inflation? Let's say inflation was historically 3%. We know we don't want to look at inflation numbers right now, but historically, let's
yep,
say inflation's 3%. If inflation's 3% and you're making 4%, what are you really making?
correct. I'm losing. So
You're
yeah,
making one, yeah, you're making
yeah,
that 1%.
that's
So if inflation's 3, you're making 4. You're really only making 1 because inflation is eating away. You've
yeah,
got to outpace inflation or you're losing money. Period.
yeah,
That it has to happen. So why in the world do we do this? Why in the world do we go to the bank and let them get all the return? There's a couple reasons, and they're good reasons. Liquidity. We need to be able to use our money,
sure.
so we put it somewhere where we can actually get access to it. The second thing is there's a word you said earlier. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh wait, guarantees. When we put our money in the bank, we get a guarantee that even if the bank goes out of business, markets crash, our money's not going to lose any interest. If
Yep,
the bank goes out of business, we have a F, right? The big four letters on the outside of the bank: FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation,
yep,
which, by the way, is a company. It's not the federal government. Anyhow, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Insurance. What is the bank doing? The bank is taking part of that 10%. They're buying an insurance wrapper on your money that says you can have up to $250,000 in the bank, and if the bank goes out of business, the insurance company is going to guarantee that your money is still safe and protected.
yep,
Well, here's the question. And by the way, that's all insurance ever is. Insurance is just a guarantee. If you have insurance on your phone and you sit on it and break it, they guarantee to give you a new phone. If you have
yep,
insurance on your car and you wreck your car, they guarantee to give you a new car. So insurance is just a guarantee. When we're talking about like homeowners insurance and car
yeah.
insurance and insurance on your personal property, phones, that type of thing. So what if we could bypass the bank and go directly to these third party companies
Hmm.
where we could get an insurance wrapper on our money, where we get a guarantee of no loss on our money,
Yep.
but we also get the high rates of return. Instead of the bank getting the high rates of return, what if we got the high rates of return?
I mean, that sounds pretty
That
good.
concept.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is what the wealthy do. When you look at the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts, why are the Rockefellers still billionaires? Because they structured family offices and family banks where they actually bypassed the traditional bank, had account structures that allowed them to get the high returns with no downside market risk on those accounts.
Hmm.
On top of that, an added benefit, if you're the bank, let's think about this for a second. What does the bank also do with our money? So not only do they place it, they immediately loan our money out
Yeah.
on car payments, credit card payments, house notes. So the bank is double dipping on our dollar. They're placing our money and earning interest, then they're also loaning against our money, and they can loan that same dollar out to 10 different, every $1 they have,
Yeah.
they can loan it out to 10 different people. So if they're making 5, 10, 22%, 30% interest on credit cards, right, by loaning that money out to the tune of 10, let's say they just did that once. They're making 10% by placing it. Let's say they're just making another 10%. So really they're making 20% interest while they're paying us a tenth of a percent.
Yep.
And you know this is true because when you go to Vegas and you look at all the casinos, those big, beautiful buildings, those big, beautiful casinos, all the marble entryways, right, in the big, beautiful buildings, do they build those big, beautiful buildings off all the winnings they pay out? No, right? That's all the money they're taking in that builds those big, beautiful resorts.
Yeah.
Go to any, well, you can look behind me, right? Go to any big city. The tallest, prettiest, most well-designed architecture buildings in any major city, bank buildings. Bank buildings.
Yep.
So they're not building these big, beautiful buildings off the money they're paying you on your money. So the question is, if we could bypass the bank and do what the bank's doing, leverage your money for you, you start doing what the wealthy do. And Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investors of all time, says there's two rules of money. Rule number one, never lose your money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. So the wealthy understand how to protect their money. They tell you not to lose it, but they don't tell you how. So one of the things our firm does is we focus on taking what works for the wealthy and bringing it out to people who normally would never get that information. Yeah. So let me share with you a couple of examples here of different accounts that are available. Okay. So as you look on the left-hand side, these are things people want out of their accounts. They want growth. You want to be able to grow your money. You got to get higher than that inflation rate. Otherwise, you're losing money. So you've got to have the potential to outpace inflation. Well, banks don't allow you to outpace inflation. 401k, brokerage accounts, private pensions, tax-free retirement accounts, they do. Next one down, principal protection, being able to put money in and the money you put in, not have it at risk. Well, the bank can do that, but 401ks and brokerage accounts can't. No risk of market loss. When the markets crash, not participating in that loss. Easy access, liquidity, being able to have access to your money, really use it when you need it. Legacy. What about the ability to pass it on to the next generation? Like we talked about with 401ks, they're terrible for that. Chronic critical terminal income replacement. If something happens to you health-wise, you may have medical coverage at work that says, hey, if you have a medical bill, we'll pay the bill. But if you're off work and you can't go to work, how do you replace that income? How do you make your car payment, your house payment? How do you put food on the table if you don't have some sort of income replacement strategy in place, especially for the business owners that are on this? That's it, right? They're them being able to run their business, but also so many families are dual income families, and what happens when one of them can no longer go to work? And if they're not a dual income family, if you're the sole breadwinner, holy cow, you better have something in place, because over 70% of all Americans are going to need some sort of long-term care in their lifetime. And if they're still working when that happens, how do you replace that income? Next one, tax-free distribution, being able to actually put the money in, have it grow tax-free, be able to take that money out tax-free, like Roth IRAs you were talking about, but there's some other structures here. And then when it comes to probate, when we do pass it on, let's preserve the estate that we worked so hard to build. So as we look across that screen, what's the worst account on the page? Which one has the least green check marks on your
I mean, this makes me want to punch myself, but it's the 401k.
So we've been taught that you want to have this 401k when it is the least optimal. The tax-free retirement account on the right-hand side, tying your money to an index, being in an indexed account, the tax-free retirement account, is the best one on the page. And yet 90% of the people you know have their money in the one you least want it in, and 90% of people you know don't even understand, never have been taught about the tax-free retirement accounts. So as we go through this conversation, we'll dig a little bit deeper on what those look like. But you also have these private pension plans, the ability for those old 401ks and old IRAs to roll them over, old Roth IRAs, to roll them over into something called a private pension plan, which we'll touch on before we're all done. But the ability to actually structure some different accounts that the average person just doesn't know about, there's some phenomenal tools out there the average person never gets to see.
So like I've left the corporate world now. I have old 401ks. You're saying I could essentially roll that into a private pension plan, and because it'd be a qualified plan, and I wouldn't face any tax consequences of shifting it over.
Yes, you have the ability to do rollovers into an account that is going to give you a grip on your money. So anyone playing along here, anyone who's following along,
Yeah.
grab out a piece of paper and just write down the word grip. But I want you to write it down from top to bottom. So G, underneath GR, underneath RI, underneath IP, and then S.
Yeah.
Make it plural. Grips. What if you could have an account instead of the account that you're in, that when you roll the money over, that money would have guarantees on it. So the G, write guarantees next to the G.
Yeah.
Feel free to abbreviate. This is not a homework assignment. You don't have to turn in your homework, folks. No one else is looking at your paper. But I'd encourage you to write this down, just so you can remember some of this stuff later. G, guarantees on your money, meaning the money can only go up, never go down. You have a guaranteed floor every year. You can never take a loss due to market risk on your money.
Okay.
I, the ability, I'm sorry, R, if I remember how to spell grips, right? R, rate of return. This is why you write things down, folks. Right? R, rate of return. Being able to tie to the market. So whether you tie to Dow Jones or NASDAQ or S&P 500, you get to tie to a market index that whatever that index does, that's the rate of return you're going to get. But they're also going to give you an incentive on top of that, a bonus, a participation rate on top of that rate of return. So let's say that you've got a participation rate of 200%. Well, that means if the market's doing 10, it's 10 times 200%. So instead of getting 10, you'd get 20%. And if they had a participation rate of 165%, when the market did 10, you'd get 16.5%. Yep. So the ability to actually outperform what the actual index you tie to is doing, because back in the day, they used to give you a toaster. Right? They used to give you, when you open a bank account, they gave you a toaster. Well, everyone has toasters now. They don't need more toasters. So now they're giving you participation rates, additional money, which is what you really want in your account anyway.
How does that participation work, though? I'm just like, how do they have just extra cash sitting around?
So I'll actually let's get through the 5 letters, and then we'll come back and pick apart any of them, just so everyone has them written down. But the I is that index. You're tying to an index like the S&P 500, but it's also the ability to have income for life. These companies want to have your money under management. So remember all that profit that the banks are making, and they're building those buildings. These other companies are realizing, wait a second, why don't we give some of that profit back to, let's do some profit sharing with the actual people who are putting money into the accounts. Mm-hmm. Pretty novel concept. Let's make sure our clients do well. Hey, there's an idea.
That's
so the index allows you to tie it and choose, so the client actually has to select what they want. And with good coaching and mentorship, they can pick the best ones for their situation. And then they have the ability to get income for life. So for a lot of these baby boomers who are afraid of being couch surfers, like having to live with their kids because they didn't save enough money, they can actually turn on income for life in these accounts, which says that the company is going to make them an offer. Hey, you've saved up this much money. We're going to start paying you X dollars a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, depending on how much you have saved. Sure. But no matter how long you live, even if you would have run out of money, they're going to keep paying you that amount for the rest of your life. So I've got a gal in our business, Jessica. Her grandma's 96 years old. 96, still walks down to the mailbox, gets her check every month. Best decision I ever made. I don't know why she's a leprechaun all of a sudden. But anyway, she never has to worry about outliving her income, right? Yeah. For the rest of her life. She'll never, even though the account that she had would have been well depleted by now, doesn't matter. So the ability to share those profits with the actual clients and make sure the clients have that money. Next one, P, protection. On the protection side, once the money is moved into, it's called an arm's length transaction. Once money is in these private pension plans, it's completely protected from lawsuits, bankruptcies, malpractice, wage garnishments. So O.J. Simpson, love him or hate him, doesn't matter. When he got out of prison recently, he had over $2 million waiting for him.
Okay.
$2 million. How is that possible? He lost a $38 million civil suit. How could he possibly have $2 million waiting for him? because when he was playing sports, part of his sponsorship money got paid into these private pension plans. So consequently, no one could sweep that account. Heck, you and I get in a car wreck, someone sues us, wasn't even our fault, but they have a better lawyer. They
Yeah.
take our bank accounts, our mutual funds, our stocks. Once money is moved into these accounts, no one can sweep that money back out of it. I don't care whether you love OJ or hate OJ. Wouldn't you love to have that kind of protection
Damn.
on your money?
Oh, wait.
Right.
So OJ is able to lose a $30 million civil suit. May or may not have killed his wife. um, and he's still able to get out of jail and have $2 or $3 million sitting around waiting for him because of a policy he put in place.
Google it. Fact.
Jesus. Okay. Gotta love how things are structured. Right.
Yeah. No. And again, I don't. Again, it doesn't matter whether you love or hate OJ. You think he should have had that money or shouldn't have it. I don't. Doesn't that? The question is on your money. Wouldn't you want that type of protection?
100%.
Because hopefully, no one following along is planning on.
Yeah, I'm not going to take the same life plan or trajectory of him. But yeah, I mean, I get it. If there's an oh shit moment, I want to make sure I have things protected. And I thought I was already safe enough putting a lot of things in LLCs. But it seems like this is even one step further from a protection standpoint of my assets and my family's assets.
People follow the money. People we're moving more and more into a very litigious society, and consequently, they follow the money. Whoever's got the money, that's who they're going to sue.
Yeah.
So consequently, as you grow your wealth, you want to make sure there's protection. My recommendation is you make sure there's protection in place.
Yeah.
LLCs are one way, corporations, and making sure that any money that you're personally growing has those types of protections on it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. All right. So I've got my guarantees. I'm writing on the screen here so others can follow along if need be.
Oh, nice.
So guarantees, rate of return, index/income for life, protection. What's the S?
Signing bonus. How about getting some free money? People
like
love
that.
hearing about you're hearing these athletes. Who's that? Someone just got what was it, $700 million? Right? There's some crazy.
Shohei Ohtani. Yeah.
What in the world do you have to do in your lifetime to be able to get a contract? Sign me up for that. Holy cow. That's a pretty big number. Now, part of that, we need to make sure we're talking to him and get him structured correctly in these types of accounts. So if any of you know him, let him know that we need to have a conversation.
Ready for a conversation. Okay.
But yeah, so a signing bonus, not that big of a signing bonus. But anyhow, help 10, 15%, depending on the company we use, to help offset some of the losses a lot of people have taken over the last couple of years in their accounts. Let's get them a signing bonus to actually offset that. And at some point during this, we can actually pull up some examples on these things.
Yeah,
those are just some of the examples, some of the tools, and we can peel back the layers, other questions you might have on it. But just being able to get a grip on your money for rolling stuff over. So you've got an old 401k, an old IRA sitting out there flapping in the breeze. Which of those 5 things do you currently have on your old 401k or your old IRA?
0.
Which of those things would you like to have on your account?
Do I have to actually list them in priority? Because ideally I
want all of them. All of them is the number one answer, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any of them and you'd like to have all of them, wouldn't it make sense to at least have a conversation to run some side-by-side comparisons and see how these things work?
100%. So, but I guess I would consider myself a rather financially educated or sophisticated person.
I would.
Why the hell do I not know about these things? Why do more people not know about these things? Why, when I talk to my friends or family about this, will they probably have no idea what the hell I'm talking about? What's going on? What is the catch here? Why is this not making sense?
Number one, the person having this conversation with you has to be licensed in the industry to be able to have this conversation.
Okay.
Number two, you have to have an individual conversation, meaning you have to have a diagnosis before you prescribe. No one listening in, I couldn't recommend that product anyway. That's why I said, wouldn't it make sense to at least have a conversation where you can see some things side by side, because that's what has to happen. And the people who have the licenses in the industry, number one, the majority of financial professionals don't have the licenses required to add the guarantees. Number two, the people who do have the licenses are so busy talking to the top 10%, top 5%, top 1%, because they get paid more on a larger client
Sure.
So in their mind, they're swinging for the fences with the bigger clients. They're not taking this education out to the masses. Our firm, 25 years ago, we're a 175-year-old company, but 25 years ago, we said, you know what? The industry's broken. And I know from when I was climbing the corporate ladder,
Yeah.
my first promotion to vice president, as I was climbing the corporate ladder, I finally get that promotion to vice president. The next day, Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Shearson Lehman, hey, Kevin, we can help with your finances. And I was like, hey, where were you when I was eating top ramen? When you need the help the most, there is no help. It's not till you reach a certain level financially that everybody wants to help you. All the athletes I work with, I've got a ton of former NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, right? All these former athletes that they all tell the same story that once they finally got their signing bonus, once they finally got their contract, then people came to talk to them to help them. But they only wanted to help them. They didn't want to go help their community. They just wanted to help the person who had the money.
Yeah.
Our firm, we said, no, let's take what works for the wealthy and let's bring this education out to people who normally would never get the education. So that's the biggest reason right there is that your next door neighbor hasn't talked to you about it because no one's talked to your next door neighbor about it.
Okay. So that makes sense. So it's kind of just, wow. A lack of
And
knowledge
you
or
can't go
also a lack
Google.
of
You can't
availability.
Google something you don't know. Like when we talk about guarantees, you can't. Before you have this conversation,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I'll just go. I'll be self-taught. I'll do my own research, and they do a search on the internet thinking that's research. Search and research are two completely different
Sure.
things, right?
Sure.
So true research, you're actually getting the companies, the understanding of the industry, the side-by-side comparison, the analysis, so you can actually make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Trust me, and I can speak eloquently on this, having become TikTok famous, my very first outward-facing video, first video ever that I posted. I did some training videos, but like I never did like a social media post like, hey, here I am. I decided I was going to lose weight. I stepped on the scale in February at 238 pounds, and in the back of my mind, I remember hearing that for a man, their waistline is their lifeline, and if you ever get over 40 inches, a lot of challenges, diabetes, heart attack, stroke. There's a potential for just a ton of problems if you ever allow your waistline to get over 40 inches. And I know 238, almost 240 pounds isn't the same as 40 inches, but that 40 number stuck out to me. And as soon as I thought I was about to hit 240, I'm like, stop, drop, and roll. I have got to change my life. This is unacceptable. I want to be around to see my grandkids' kids, and that ain't going to happen if I don't get rid of this obesity. So I did what any intelligent person would do. If you want to get in shape, you go to McDonald's, right? If you want to get healthy.
That's a lot of logic there. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, maybe that's fuzzy logic. I don't know. But I decided that I was going to cut my meals in half. I was going to eat 3 meals a day, but I was going to cut every meal in half and eat anything on the menu. But instead of supersize me, I was going to be half size me.
Yeah.
My supersize me guy almost died in 30 days because he was eating everything they gave him. And if they said, do you want to supersize it? He said yes. And by putting all that in, he was just clogging everything up. By eating McDonald's food that the world would say, hey, it's not the healthiest food, and yet they serve like 65 billion people a day, so they're doing something. But the ability to eat 3 meals a day, nothing but McDonald's, and everything on the menu. Big Macs, quarter pounders, don't be bitter while I'm eating my apple fritter and losing weight. Right? Can this quarter pounder with cheese lower my A1Cs? Can this Big Mac reduce my risk of heart attack? And it turns out that if you cut your meals in half, eat 3 meals a day, you're going to be fine. If each of those meals is about 1,000 calories, so if you're cutting them in half, you're getting about 500 calories per meal. That's 1,500 a day. If I'm burning 2,000 just walking around, I'm in a calorie deficit. I'm going to lose weight and get healthier. And it turns out obesity is more dangerous than a French fry. When people say, Kevin, these things sound too good to be true, and guarantees on your money, you've been getting guarantees on your money your whole life. It's just the bank has been giving it to you, and they've been getting the return. Why not get it yourself and you get the rate of return? So it's not too good to be true. Just like you can eat McDonald's and lose weight and get healthier, it's not too good to be true to get high returns with no risk. It's the education. Think about it. Do you think most people are where they'd like to be financially?
No. I mean, the wealth to poor ratio in this country has become even more out of whack. So I would say, the majority of people are not where they want to be. including
Is
myself.
it because they're not working hard?
No, I'd say there's plenty of hard workers out there. Yes, you might have some people that aren't working hard, but I'd say the majority of people mean well. And you've got school teachers out there. I mean, one thing, I think you know this about me, but I have a mental health company, and I believe the two most underappreciated groups out there are school teachers, where a lot of my family is from, and therapists and clinical social workers. I think they're the two most underappreciated things, and it's a
Deeply needed,
area of pet peeve.
absolutely necessary, vital to the growth of our society, and completely underpaid.
Correct. And so I know they're all working their asses off. I mean, and believe
Working hard,
if
putting
you
their
guys ever
own
watch
money
this, I
into it,
appreciate it.
buying pencils themselves. I mean, just crazy, right? The stories you hear. So if it's not that if it's not that we're not working hard enough,
Yep.
then maybe if what we're doing isn't working, maybe we don't understand the system, and
Yep.
the people who are becoming wealthy do understand this. Maybe there's some education needed there,
I
and
agree.
that's literally what I love that we're having this conversation to open the door for these conversations so people can get the education. Now, do something with it or not, that's your choice, but at least make an informed decision, which most people are not making
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, hey, I went to a great high school, a great university, a great MBA. And I didn't really get a lot of financial education. And that just kind of frustrates me because you're pouring all this money into education. Why wasn't it there? But hey, that's for another day. I'm just glad we're having this conversation so that hopefully I can, one, minimize mistakes selfishly for myself, but if anybody watches this, help them minimize the mistakes as well. Because no, I don't think any of us get together and say we want to see more suffering in the world. I think ultimately we want to see more people succeed. So anyhow, I'll get off my little soapbox. I know this is more for me to grill you on some questions, but yes, please go ahead.
No, what question? What else? So continue. Hit me.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is okay, we've got these guarantees. The FDIC, like you said, that's insurance for a bank. So is this more or less than insurance that we're then utilizing, or how should I properly view this?
Yeah, so in order to get a guarantee, somebody has, like a warranty on your car. A warranty on your car is only as good as the company that gives you the warranty. If that company is out of business, the warranty doesn't exist anymore.
Sure.
So you've got to deal with a reputable company. So if I'm going to deal with a reputable company, how about 100 years old or more, in most cases, 100-year-old companies, uh, cash reserves in the billions with a B, or
Yeah.
the government doesn't allow them to offer the guarantees. When banks have gone under, so in 2002 and 2008, when banks needed bailouts, and most recently Silicon Valley Bank, I haven't heard about that recently, right? All these banks going out of business or needing credit unions, savings loans, all them needing. What if we were dealing with companies that have been around for 100 years, had billions in cash reserves, and not a single one of them has ever needed a bailout,
Yeah.
no matter how bad the economy's got? That's a pretty good track record. I like those kind of track records. So when
Now,
you,
Kevin, but you say never need a bailout. Didn't AIG need a bailout, or can you educate me on this?
yeah, and AIG has a banking division and AIG has an insurance division.
Ah,
AIG's banking division needed the bailout. Their insurance division could have covered them, but you're not allowed to commingle those
yeah,
funds.
okay.
So the banking side did, but the insurance side did not. So these 100-year-old insurance companies have the ability to offer a wrapper around your money, just like the FDIC is a wrapper around the bank's money. By offering this wrapper to the individual, though,
Yeah,
you now have a wrapper of insurance. And insurance, again, is just a guarantee,
yeah,
and they guarantee that your money will be completely protected from market loss. If the market goes down, you don't lose a dime, zero risk. Whenever you want, we can go ahead and pull up some examples of just how some of these accounts are structured and show you the historical facts that when everyone else was losing money in 2002, 2008,
yeah.
2022, not a single one of the clients in these protected asset class products ever lost a dime to market risk. And that's been true for over 100 years.
Yeah.
I like 100-year track records.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this new thing came out that we think is going to work. No, I'm not interested in that. Yeah, I might put a little bit of money into something like that, but I want to make sure that you don't gamble the rent money. You don't gamble the mortgage money. You don't gamble your kids' education. Use protected asset class products, things that can only go up, never go down.
Yeah.
and that's your foundation financially. Then you can layer other more speculative things on top of that. But what if you could have that banking structure that this money that's protected, you could loan money to yourself even for the more speculative things, but your base amount was never at risk. So
Yeah.
you actually got to double dip on your dollar, just like the bank gets to double dip on your dollar. When's the last time you got to use the same dollar twice?
Never.
So if the bank can do it, wouldn't it be kind of, if it's good for the goose, isn't it probably good for the gander?
Yeah, I would. I haven't heard that saying in a while, but yes, I would say, yeah,
I'm sorry, I grew up on a ranch breaking and training horses. I got some old colloquialisms I'll pull out of my back pocket every now and then.
yeah. So hey, I
Don't
would
put your boots
absolutely
in the
love
oven
to
and tell
use
me
my
they're
money
biscuits.
twice.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I would love to use my money twice. I just don't know how to utilize my money twice unless I turn into my own bank, and unless if that's what you're saying, like I can become my own bank, then please tell me how I can become my own bank because I would love nothing more than to be the Bank of Cosgrove.
Absolutely. So that structure, that tax-free retirement account we were
Yeah,
talking about earlier that had all the green check marks in it,
yeah,
that account, as you grow your assets, what's the inventory of a bank? Or if you have a car manufacturing, you have a lot of inventory, right? You've got spark plugs and engines and tires and right all the things if you're going to build a car. Which, by the way, crazy thing. A friend of mine, a new friend, I met him and he was telling me the story that he worked for Ford, and during the pandemic, they had to stop production on their assembly lines for lack of one SKU. So SKU, right? Part numbers. They have these, a million part numbers that go into
yeah.
a car. The company that made the emblem for the front of their Mustangs, that company got into some legal waters and got like cease and desist orders, and they had no one else as a backup, and they literally had to stop their assembly lines for lack of emblems on. They couldn't send the cars out to the dealerships, right, because they didn't have the emblems on them.
Wow.
So, yeah, inventory items. You stop, drop, and roll. If you run out of your inventory, you can get those things taken care of.
Yeah,
Well, what's the inventory of a bank? The bank only has one inventory item: cash.
yeah,
Right? As soon as you have the cash, now you can do things. So if you had the Bank of Cosgrove, what would you have? You'd have an inventory of some cash built up, but then structured correctly in one of these accounts, high returns, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40% return on your money. I'll show you that here in a minute. So you're able
yeah.
to get all the high returns with no risk once that money's grown. Not only the money you put in, but as your money grows,
Mhm.
that's all protected. The money you put in plus any growth dollars every year, basically locking in at that high watermark so you can never lose to market risk any of that money. But you also have the ability to double dip on that dollar. So as soon as you have some money built up in that account, let's say, heaven forbid, your transmission goes out in your car
Yeah,
and you got to spend $3,000 to get a new transmission. I
yeah.
don't know what transmission costs these days, but let's say it costs $3,000 to get yours fixed.
Works for me. Yep.
What would you do if you didn't have the cash on hand in your savings account, or if you didn't want to tap into that, you wanted to save that for other emergencies, so you grab out your credit card and you go ahead and pay the auto repair shop to fix your transmission. And now you're going to pay 15, 18, 20%, depending on what your credit score is on interest you're going to be paying on that credit card. Or you've got over $3,000 sitting in your savings in your personal bank that you're
Hmm.
building up. Why not loan yourself the $3,000? And
Yep.
here's your loan qualification process. Do I qualify? Yes, I do. Because you are the bank, right? So you loan yourself the money, you then pay off the auto repair shop,
Yeah.
but now that $200 payment you're going to pay on your credit card and pay interest to someone else, you can choose to pay that credit card payment to yourself. So
Hmm.
now your money never left your account. You loaned against that money. You didn't take the money out. So that money is still sitting there earning a 10, 15, 20% return on the
Yeah.
account, not losing anything. And you got to use the money. So you double dipped. You got to use it
Yeah.
simultaneously. And all the interest you would have paid the credit card, you're now paying back interest to yourself as well. Think about everyone following along here. Think about all the interest your family has paid. Not just you. I'm talking parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces. Think of all the interest your family has paid over their
Yeah.
lifetime. What if your family had all that interest back and all the interest it would have made in a high interest account? Wouldn't your family have to be better off financially at that point?
Yeah. Wow. Damn.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
I don't care how well you've done financially. You would have to be better off financially by having that structure in place.
Yeah.
So the short answer is yes, you absolutely, in these tax-free retirement accounts and these indexed accounts, you have the ability to get high returns, no risk. Oh, no tax on the growth, no tax on the distribution, but you also have that ability to loan yourself money. That's one of the ways to get a distribution.
Yeah.
Loans are non-taxable.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you take out a $500,000 house loan, the bank gives you 500,000 that you receive that money, and then you basically hand it to the owner of the house that you're buying, and you buy that house,
Yep.
and now you're making a payment on the loan to the bank.
Yeah.
Did you have to pay taxes on $500,000 of additional income that year?
No. In fact, I got a tax write off with the interest that I'm paying.
Hey, right? And you get to write off the depreciation of the house that you bought, depending
Yeah.
on whether it's a rental property or not. So you get appreciation, but you get to write off depreciation. It's crazy, right? Phantom income is a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
but the ability to actually get that 500,000 in the first place, you don't pay taxes. Loans are non-taxable. So
Hmm.
when you're growing money in your account and you loan it back out to yourself, there is no taxes due on receiving those funds.
Why would the government want me to even be able to do this then? Because as we touched on at the start, we predict taxes are probably only going to go up and never go down. Why would the government then want this? Or are they trying to make it hard for people? Like, as you already said, I didn't really know about this. I know a lot of people probably don't know about this. So, how do we understand where the government
Right.
ends in this situation?
So the government uses tax breaks to incentivize us to do things.
Sure.
The government uses tax breaks to incentivize us to do things. Whenever you get a tax break, realize there's a benefit to the government, or they wouldn't be doing it. Well, let's think about that for a second. So let's say you use the house example you just used. When you buy a house, if you're going to be a renter versus a homeowner has to make more money to be able to save up the down payment to be able to
Yep.
then afford to buy the house. They have to be more stable because they're buying a house in one area, so they're stable in that community.
Mm-hmm.
Once they buy the house, they're making more income in that community, so they're paying more sales tax, they're paying more income tax, and they just bought a piece of property, so now they're paying property. You understand that by giving you that little tax break,
Yeah.
they're getting a whole bunch more revenue. By giving you a little bit, they're getting a lot.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, every time you see a tax break, don't be mad at politicians who are getting big tax breaks. Learn what they're writing off and get the same tax breaks yourself, right?
Yeah.
The tax code was written in this country for you to have a business. So anyone who's following along who's just an employee, I highly recommend, I don't care if it's selling Tupperware or tomatoes out of your backyard or being a referral agent in a business like ours, do something that allows you to have a business income so you get all the tax write-offs that come along with being a business owner, even
Yeah.
part-time. If you're just part-time in that business, you can even lose money in your business for 4 years, not make a dime for 4 years before the IRS considers it a hobby, and you get all the tax breaks that go along with that. So that's just one example. But the reason is IRS wants you to be a business owner. Because if you're a business owner, you're bringing employees on, you're driving commerce, you're driving revenue, you're making more income, you're getting more income. So again, there's always a benefit to the government.
Yeah.
So why do they want people to use these types of accounts? Well, we were doing these accounts before Roth IRAs even existed, before there was even such a thing as a Roth IRA. That's only been around for 25 years or so.
Yeah.
So we had these accounts that would grow tax free and take them out tax free. People are like, how's that possible? There's no way.
Yeah. How is
The
it?
government is going to tax your money in one of three places at least: when you make it, when you grow it, or when you take it. If you're doing notes on your screen, put in make it, grow it, or take it.
All right.
So make it, those of you playing along at home, that's a good one to take. So you can get taxed when you make your money, you can get taxed when you grow your money, or when you take the money, the distributions of it. They don't really care where. As long as they get their taxes, they're fine. So we talked about a 401k being pre-tax dollars, and we said earlier we'd rather pay the tax on the seed and never pay the tax on the harvest. So if I use after-tax dollars
Mm-hmm.
into these accounts, since the government already got their tax on my normal income tax, I then use an after-tax dollar instead of a pre-tax dollar. They say that that money goes into this account and grows tax-free and take it out tax-free. And again, before Roth IRAs came along, they're like, there's no way that's possible. Like, yeah, they want their tax revenue now. They want to be able to use that money to go buy those $600 toilet seats and the $500 hammers that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
government is notorious for buying. Uh, $600 toilet seat. That better have a bidet built in. That better be a heated toilet seat, right? I want some super special stuff going on there. But anyhow, think about it this way. If they don't encourage us to save money, if the
Yep.
government doesn't give us incentives to put our money into accounts so that it can grow tax free and take it out tax free, they realized we were going to become a country of impoverished old people. They had to come up with ways to incentivize this. So then when Roth IRAs came out, we're like, see,
Yeah.
they're not doing. There's no legislation. There's no one litigating against Roth. No one wants to take that off the table.
Sure.
These tax benefits of being able to take a loan and be able to take your loan out, that's been around for over 100 years. So this, and no one's ever tried. In fact, these accounts, instead of them trying to stranglehold them or take them off, they're actually incentivizing people to use them more. In 2021, they just like tripled the amount of money you can put into these accounts. So there's actually legislation to increase this, not decrease it. Because again, the government's going to get their taxes other places because they got the tax on the revenue before you put it in. So you tax when you make it versus taxing when you take it later on at an unknown future tax rate.
Okay. Wow. That's okay. That's really good perspective, and it's making me think a little bit different from a mindset perspective. So okay, got it on that part. And I want to be respectful of your time because I know we're pretty much running up on an hour here. And I still have a ton of questions saved for you. Where would you want to go next from a directional standpoint to make sure we cover kind of the biggest and most important things?
Yeah, so the two flagship things that I would recommend most people at least examine are these tax-free retirement accounts and the private pension plans, the GRIP that we had everyone write down earlier.
Yeah.
Cool thing about them, though, is they can actually work in conjunction with each other. You can actually bolt them together. So now you have this banking structure and you have a way to fund the banking structure, which I'll walk through. Let me just give you a little bit more detail. Let me show you just a couple more examples of how powerful this really is. And then we can kind of maybe put a bow on it with how you can kind of blend some of this stuff together. And by the way, this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are two flagship things that we recommend people at least look at as for their structure. There's a bunch of other things as well, but once you have that foundation in place, you can layer those other things on top of it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out here again.
Yeah, I just try to jot those on the screen in case people are trying to follow along. So let's see.
All right, so just as an example, here's one of those types of accounts, a company that you guys probably recommend or probably recognize. You've heard of companies like Pacific Life, the big whale on college sports. You've heard of companies like Prudential, Get a Piece of the Rock. Here's another one, Nationwide is on your, right? You guys have heard the jingle before.
Love it. Yep, good jingle.
So in one of these accounts, you have the ability to get not 0.1%, but have a 30-year historical average of 10.35%, a floor of zero risk on the account, and a participation rate of 190%, which means if the market's doing 10%, you're actually getting 19%. So your ability to get high returns with no risk. And before someone says that sounds too good to be true, if you would have set up one of these accounts before, right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, a year later, you would have been credited over 40% interest on your account. When's the last time your 401k paid you 40% interest with no market risk whatsoever?
Wow, that's nuts. And the short answer is never for me.
Yeah, right.
So my 401ks have definitely made me sad. So.
Well, it's funny you say that because when you look at this screen, you see that the bottom line is just the normal S&P 500, the ups and downs of the market that happen.
Yep.
The top line is taking that exact same index. S&P 500 is just an index to the American economy. Euro stock is an index to the European economy. Hang Seng is an index to the Asian economy. And for those listening along, what's an index mean? S&P 500 is like people hear about it. Oh, I heard the S&P 500 is up or down. It's just 500 American companies that the S&P 500 picks the best company. One of the companies I took public was a company called PacWest Telecom. that we became an S&P 500 company. We were the telecom industry in the S&P 500.
Sure.
So it's just 500 companies, and if those 500 companies are going up in value, if they're doing well financially, that means our economy is doing well. So it's an index that our economy is doing well. Or if, as a group, those 500 companies are going down in value, their share prices are going down in value, that means our economy is hurting. So it's an index to our economy.
Yeah.
But if you look at the S&P 500 over time, it's averaged about 10%, but you're taking this roller coaster of ups and downs, and that's that bottom line that you see.
Yeah.
And here's a mistake, a lie, an absolute fallacy that most people who are listening on have been taught. You've been taught that if the market goes down, it's okay, just wait, and eventually your account value will come back up again. As long as you don't cash out at the bottom, you're not going to interrupt your growth, and eventually it'll grow back to where it was. You didn't really lose anything if you wait. You've got people following along have probably heard that statement before. You didn't lose anything. As long as you hold, you didn't lose anything. That is one of the biggest lies that financial advisors tell people. Financial professionals tell people you didn't lose anything as long as you wait. It's a complete lie. Why do I say it's a lie? Let's say you had $100,000 in your account. Market drops 40%. By the way, in 2002 and 2008, my brokers lost 40% of my money in 2002. They lost 40% of my money in 2008. Before I learned these concepts and understood these tools, my 401ks, because I was heavily into my 401ks, and the other brokerage accounts, I had 40% of my money gone in 2002. My brokers made me broker. I think that's why they call them that. But here's the thing. Let's say you have $100,000 right before 2008 happens. The market drops 40%. How much money? If you had 100,000 and now the market's down 40%, how much money do you have left?
Yeah, I've got 60. Yeah.
But they said you didn't lose anything because you still have all your shares, and eventually those shares will go back up in value. That's a smoke and mirrors statement. Why? Because the next year, most of your big up years are rebound years from your big down years. If you can see it on the screen, 2009, 23% was a rebound year after the big drop year. So the 23%, do you get 23% on the old 100,000? No. You get 23% more shares, which they just told you to look at. They said, hey, look at your shares. You still have all your shares. Do you get 23% more shares? No. Or do you get 23% only on the balance you have left?
Yeah.
So they lost 40,000 of your money. That money is no longer there to earn interest. Well, here's how bad that really is. If you're 45 years old and the market dropped and you lost 40,000, they lost 40,000 of your dollars, that $40,000 isn't there. If the market's averaging 10%, every 7 years your money will double. Well, that 40,000 isn't there to double 7 years from then. That 80,000 isn't there to double to 160, and the 160 isn't there to double to 320 by the time you're 65. So them saying they didn't lose you any money actually cost you 320,000 in future value.
Yeah.
So I don't know maybe you wouldn't be upset if someone stole 40,000 from you, but if someone stole $320,000, would that be a little frustrating?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then they looked you in the eye and said you didn't lose anything.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah,
that's a little bit annoying.
I'm just looking at your chart right now, and I see like 07 is 111,000, and then to get back to 111,000 basically was in between 2012 and 2013.
They call it the lost decade, right? The lost decade of you didn't have any. But even then, look what happened above that. If you wouldn't have lost the money in the first place, by that same thing, 2013, you'd have $300,000 in your account.
I mean, okay, so then I guess one thing that immediately pops to my mind is like, this has to cost me something, right? So like, how can I get this blue line without not having to pay anything incremental, or like what is occurring kind of behind the scenes?
Is there a cost for a wrapper of insurance on your money? Absolutely. Is there a cost for not having that wrapper of insurance? Absolutely.
Yeah,
so the net is that's why we run the numbers side by side and make sure what's your cost for taxes and what's your cost for market risk compared to if I can pay $1 to avoid $30 in taxes, I'll buy $1 wrapper of insurance to avoid $30 in taxes.
Yep.
Right? Not evade, get a legal, honest, ethical tax break, I'll pay $1 to not have to pay $30. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So when we run the illustrations for someone, we're able to show them exactly what the cost of not having this is versus the cost of having it. Well, I'll just give you an example. Hang on a second. Let me switch screens here.
Sure.
So when we look at the ability to have one of these accounts, let's say somebody just went and got a brokerage account.
Okay.
And for training and education purposes, let's say you went and put money into a 401k or just a brokerage account.
Yep.
And as you're putting money in, on the left side, you can see they're 30 years old. They're putting in $300 a month.
Yep.
Or $250 a month, so $3,000 a year.
Yep.
You do that for the first couple of years, raises, promotions, whatever. They go to $500 a month, and then they never go to more than $750 a month. That they do that for the rest of their working life, even if they get raises or promotions. Just for a simple example here,
sure.
All the historical S&P, the ups and downs, they're going to have up years where they make money. They're going to have down years where they lose money, and by the time it's all said and done, they're going to have at 1.5% in fees, $215,000, and most of your 401ks are between 1 to 3% in fees. Yep. So 1.5%, $215,000 in fees. But notice they're paying that regardless whether the company is making them money or losing them money. They're still paying that fee. Now, what did they buy for $215,000? They bought air. What do I mean? They bought a broker who hopefully did as well as the S&P 500. The reality is, hedge funds, brokerage houses, Warren Buffett made $1 million bet with these hedge fund guys saying, hey, S&P 500 versus you guys over the 10-year period, I'm betting $1 million that the S&P 500 will beat you.
Yep.
And about 4 years ago, that 10 years was up, and the Girls Club of Omaha, which is who he donated it to, were the big benefactors of him winning that bet.
Yep.
So the 96% of brokerage houses don't beat the S&P 500. Yep. So you're paying a fee to do what the S&P 500 does, hopefully, right? That's literally what. So you're buying nothing. Yeah. So you spend that $215 in fees, you end up with $866,000. Now remember, they would tell you not to take more than 4%, but just for simple numbers, I'm showing 10% coming out at $86,000 a year. Pay taxes on it, you're left with $65,000 of spendable money, right, a year at that point.
Yeah.
So that's your 30-year-old to 65-year-old putting their money in their 401k, their brokerage account, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Or same money, same time, going into an account that has guarantees. So you'll notice on the right-hand column there that when the left-hand side had red numbers, there's no red numbers on the right-hand column because of those guarantees we talked about. So if there are any
fees... Can you keep scrolling there, Kevin? I think I can just see on the screen still the 401ks. I'm starting to see some blue squares, historical back tested. Okay, got it.
Okay, yeah. So you have no losses on that account. So that wrapper of insurance that gave them that guarantee of no losses, notice that there's a slightly different amount in the account. We're going to slide over here. They're going to pay $188,000.
Right now, I see a 3% difference in performance. This blue area is 3% better than the stock market.
But that's not even real either. It's even better than that because you never had to recover from losses. So the same rates of return. What if they were both 10%? 10% never recovering from losses will be higher than 10% averaged after loss. Here, guys, this is crazy. The reality of another lie the industry talks about, when they use averages for rates of return, when you see Janus mutual funds did X%, averaged X over X amount of years.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. They're taking positive and negative years.
Yeah.
As soon as you put a negative year into the calculation, the averages don't work. Think about it. If you had $100 and that $100 had a 50% gain year and then a 50% loss year, your average return would be 0 at the end of those 2 years. That's your average. You average 0. So in most people's minds, they think, well, I didn't lose anything. Well, no, because you had a 50% gain year, you went up to $150. Then you had a 50% loss year, you lost $75 of that. So now you're left with only $75 in your account. They get to tell you average 0 when
Yep.
you actually lost 25% of your money.
Yep.
It's a lie. Averages don't work when there's negative numbers.
Yeah.
So, how do you fix that? Don't take a loss. Never have a loss in the first place. Right? So 13 is better, but it's even better than that. But look at the total cost. The total fees for this person over that time was $188,000, not the 215. So they paid less. But what did they get for the 188? They got guarantees on their money to where they can only go up, never go down.
Yeah.
They got zero risk, right? So on that, but they also had no taxes. It grew tax free, and they get to take it out tax free.
Interesting.
And they also had a wrapper of protection. If something did happen, then the family is going to get the money inside plus that wrapper of protection.
Yeah.
But look what their cash did. Not only did they buy those things, look what their value of the account, $2.7 million. You take out 10% a year to live on, that's $278,000, pay zero in taxes. You get to retire on $278,000. Silly question, Dan. You have a choice. You're putting your money away. You could have $65,000 or $278,000 a year to live on.
Oh man.
I don't know. I don't know. It seems like I might want to have the higher amount, but I'm kind of crazy that way. But that's just me.
Wow. So basically that's a 5x difference. It's basically a 5x difference is my rough calculations. And I mean, I don't know where inflation's going to be by the time I get to retire, but I think I'll be able to survive off of $278,000 a year versus I think
better than 65,000.
Yeah.
Regardless, better than no matter how bad it is. I'd rather have more than less.
Yeah.
Right. So the ability to have that guarantee on your money to get the high returns with no risk, no tax on the growth, no tax on distribution. I think everyone should at least have that conversation. I think they should at least see a side-by-side comparison of what's really happening in their 401k versus what could happen structured correctly.
Yeah. I mean, this is incredible. So thank you for that. I mean, I hadn't really thought through everything in this much detail, but I understand. Like, okay, what is necessarily done by everyone is not what is the right thing to do. And
who's telling us to do it? Here's the thing. So I love what you just said. What everyone else, if all the lemmings are doing this,
correct.
Haven't you ever heard that if everyone else is doing this, you might want to do the opposite?
Yeah.
So when all the talking heads on the radio, when all the talking heads on the podcast are saying one thing, you might want to start looking at something else sometimes. And let me just give you a great example of that. Have you ever heard that you should pay your house off early? Has anyone ever told you to pay your house off early? Like pay an extra payment, do a 15-year loan instead of a 30-year loan, make bilateral payment, right? Just all these different strategies to pay your house off early.
Yeah.
Let's just think about this for 30 seconds. People following along are going to understand how much misinformation is out there in just this one simple example.
Sure.
And if this is true, what else should we be looking at as well? So let's say you have a 30-year loan on a $500,000 mortgage before interest rates went through the roof. You had a $2,000 mortgage payment, or a 15-year loan would be a $3,000 mortgage payment. Yeah. $2,000 versus $3,000. You're paying an extra $1,000 into your house? No, you're paying it to the mortgage company so they can go loan it to other people. There's an incentive for them to get you to do this because it gives them more cash up front to loan to other people.
Yeah.
But on your statement, it shows that your cash equity is going up in your house by doing that. So let me ask you a question. When your house goes up in value, when it appreciates, does it go up in value based on the money that you paid to the mortgage company or based on the market that you're in? Market. Which one causes your house to market? Has nothing to, whether you have $1 or $100,000 of your own money paid extra into your mortgage, your house is going to appreciate the same amount. So any dollar extra you pay to your mortgage is earning 0% interest for you. Okay. But Kevin, it's paying off a debt. Yeah, I understand that. Most people aren't in the 7 or 8% loans. They're all in the 2 or 3 or 4% loans. So consequently, you have money that could be earning you 10% with guarantees on it, or it can be paying off a 3%, 4% debt. I'm sorry. Why would I take 10% money to pay off 4% debt? That's silly. But let's take this a little further. Let's say your neighbor is paying their house off. They're putting extra money in it. They're halfway home. They've got 250,000 of cash equity in their house.
Yeah.
You have been putting your money in this bucket we've been talking about, your structure that you're going to be able to bank out of, and we're even talking about how much more money. That analogy I just showed you earlier wasn't even showing any banking going out of that. That was just the actual return on. The more you use the money, the more you'll have. But you've been putting your money in this bucket. They've been putting their money in the house. You both have 250,000. You have 250 plus interest. They just have 250 and cash equity in the house. You have 250 cash plus interest. Let's say it's both just 250, and both people lose their job. If you don't make your house payment for 4 months, and by the way, before COVID, I used to say that people are like, oh, I'll never lose my job. After COVID, everyone's like, yeah, I could lose my job, right?
Yep.
But if you lose your job and don't make your house payment for 4 months, what happens?
I don't have my house anymore.
They foreclose on it, right? Besides your house, what else do they take?
Well, anything else that they can actually grab to make themselves whole.
All the cash inside of it. That $250,000 of cash that you had as equity in your house, gone.
Yep.
And you're like, but Kevin, I wouldn't let that happen. I just refinanced the house and pulled the cash out. Sorry, you don't have a job. No one will give you a loan. Yep. You lose the house. The person who wanted to have safety and security actually put themselves in the most unsafe, unstable position possible in that scenario. Wow. You have a bucket of money. You could be out of work for years. You can make your house payment. You're not making the house payment. The bucket is making the house payment for you. You have no stress, no anxiety. Cash is king. You don't have to worry about anything because you have the money to make the house payment. You have no risk. Now, that's a semi-extreme example. Let's take that off the table. Let's say you don't lose your jobs.
Yep.
Somewhere prior to 15 years, money plus interest has to get you to 500,000 faster than money plus no interest, right? When we put money in the house, we're getting no interest on that. So money plus interest has to get you to 500,000 faster than money plus no interest. So somewhere prior to 15 years, you call me up and you're like, Kevin, this is amazing. I've got the $500,000 in my bucket. Let's go ahead and pay the house off. I've always wanted to own my home free and clear. And I say, no. And you're like, no, why not? Because you have a goose that's laying 10% golden eggs with guarantees of no risk on it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I let the goose pay me a 10% golden egg, take 3, 4, 5% of that, pay my house payment, and I get to keep the arbitrage. I get to keep the excess.
Yeah.
So I still get all my tax write-offs.
Yeah.
I don't have a house payment. I have security, stability. I have no house payment because my buckets make and I'm earning the extra interest. Eventually, the house will be paid off, and I'll still have the goose and all the excess interest.
Yeah.
Give me one, and I mean one, logical reason to ever pay an extra dollar into my mortgage. And yet, how many of us have been taught our whole lives? Well, why? Why would they teach us that? Follow the money, right? These talking heads, when they tell you to refinance your house, these companies that will refinance your house pay them for those leads, and they get you to put more money in so they have more money to loan to other people faster.
Yeah.
Well, but Kevin, my grandma told me to do it. My grandma's not making any money on this. Why does she tell me to do it? Because she had a 14% loan on her house. If you have a 14% loan on your house and you only have money making 10%, using 10% money to pay off 14% makes sense. Using 10% money to pay off 2% money makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
And yet, you've heard your whole life, pay your house off early, pay your mortgage off early. Guys, that's not a good financial decision.
Yeah.
Now, it can be a good emotional decision, but it's not a good financial decision if you have these accounts that we're talking about, the ability to get higher returns with no risk.
Huh. That's interesting. Okay. That's really interesting. Wow. All right. So, I mean, this is, man, I don't know where to go next.
We did promise the viewers, we promised them we'd show how to connect the two. So let me just do that real quick.
Yeah,
so
can we do that? Because I even have retirement accounts myself where I'm just like, how do I get out of these things? So I'd like to see this personally myself.
All right. So let's share my screen again. 1 second. There we go.
Okay.
So when we structure these accounts, we talked about the fact that you can have an old 401k, old IRA, old KEO, SEP IRA, whatever, 403b. We can roll that over, and however its tax structure was structured before, we can maintain that tax structure. So in other words, if it was a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, when we roll it over, it's still a Roth
Okay.
401k or Roth IRA inside of this private pension plan. Excuse me, it's no longer 401k. It would be converted to an IRA as it rolled over. It would
Yep.
now be a Roth IRA, though still inside the private pension plan.
Yep.
Now, once that money is moved over, you can take 10% a year out of that private pension plan with no penalty from the company you roll it into. So, for example, Athene, Lockheed Martin just rolled $10 billion, their entire $10 billion pension, they just rolled into Athene. So if Athene is good enough to handle Lockheed Martin's $10 billion, probably okay for our old $200,000 who was sitting out in a 401k
Yeah,
somewhere.
that gives me a good vote of confidence. I agree with you. Okay.
So we roll that over, and once we roll that over, that account, let's say we start taking 10% to fund into this indexed account. Now we also could be funding that indexed account with the money that we would have been putting into our 401k or some other savings vehicle. So 100 a month, 500 a month, whatever is going into that.
Yeah.
But we don't have to do that. We could just fund it out of this rollover that we did.
Sure.
So in an actual example here financially, let's say someone had $200,000 sitting in an old 401k that was flapping in the breeze.
Yep.
Which, by the way, you may hear it here first, but I am predicting in the next 12 to 24 months we are going to have another major market correction, another major drop in the market.
Yep.
Not going to be a soft landing. There's a bunch of indicators out there, a bunch of reasons why. We won't get into all of those today, but if I'm wrong, you're in an account that can only go up anyway, so you're still getting the high returns with participation rate. If I'm right, you're completely protected from any losses. So it's a no-lose scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyhow, we roll the money over. You've got $200,000 that was at risk, tax later, for example. We roll it into a private pension plan, take 10% right off the bat to fund that indexed account, but then the $180,000 that's left, 10% a year of that goes into it. So you'd think over 10 years you would completely deplete that private pension plan. But if that private pension plan is making 10% and you're taking 10%, you still have that entire nest egg amount. You're still funding its growth into this index account, which allows you to double dip on your dollars, high returns, no risk, no tax on the growth, no tax on the distribution. So just not even factoring all of that in, just the actual account, what would happen in the new account, and not doing any of that double dipping, not doing any loaning out of what we talked about, just the actual numbers on the account. By 65, that account will have grown to 600,000.
Mm-hmm.
If it's making 8% and you're taking 8%, that's $48,000 a year tax free.
Yep.
Do that for the next 20 years, that's $960,000 you took out tax free out of your account.
Yep.
But there's a wrapper of protection of $500,000 in protection wrapped around that money, giving it the tax advantages and the guarantees we talked about. But then also, when we finally pass away, the $600,000 that was sitting in the account that we're earning interest on, that money is going to pass on. All of this passes on outside of probate and income tax free to the family. So the total, when you add it up, is over $2 million. We took $200,000 of tax later at risk money, and we converted it to $2 million of tax never on the growth or distribution and zero market risk money. I don't know about you, but I like them numbers.
Yeah, those are nice. I think that's rather strong. I like, I forget which company you said just did $10 billion over to this group. So I like that there's an additional vote of confidence there.
So here's an example of that. So here's the actual account. So Athene, again, $10 billion. By the way, the participation rate, if you look at the participation rate, I usually have drawing tools. I don't have drawing tools today, so it's like the fifth one over, allocation, strategy. So participation rate, 165% and 255%. That's where when the market's doing 10, you're getting 16.5 or 25.5. Mm-hmm. And if we look at the actual last 10 years, if you made nothing on this account, if you look in the top right corner, it says annual assumed interest rate of 0.0%. 0.00. That means if the
Okay.
market lost money every year,
Hmm.
is the worst you can do is a zero. So that means if the market is negative 10, negative 20, negative 30,
Yep.
this person rolled over 250. You
Hmm.
get a signing bonus of 35,000. You see in the top left-hand side in the black and white print, you've got 250,000 went in and a
Yep.
premium bonus of 35,000, which means if you follow the accumulated value from when they were 40 years old down to when they're 50 years old, even if the market went down every single year, 10 years later, they still have more in that account than they put in. More, they only started with 250, they're still at 260 10 years later if
Yep.
the market's crashed. Now, let's look at the most recent 10 years of what happened over the last 10 years for this client. In this account, they would have made that 250 would have gone in, they got that $35,000 bonus. Look at the annual assumed interest rate. This is the actual credited rate over the last most recent 10 years. You'd
Yep.
have gotten 53%, 995, 41%, 33%, 42%. When's the last time your 401k paid you over 40% interest with no market risk?
Never.
Never. Right? And yet, that's exactly what this account has done over
Yeah.
the past 10 years. So your ability to get high returns with no risk. Kevin, you can't eat McDonald's and lose weight. Yes, you can. Kevin, you can't get high returns with no risk. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Right? And here's the most recent 10, the highest 10, and the lowest 10. The worst 10 years in the last 20 years, your 250 still would have gone to 433. Best highest would have gone to a little over a million, but the most recent 10, 994,000.
That's
So again,
nuts.
there's these things that people just don't know what they don't know. No one's ever taken them through this process. No one's ever explained these concepts to them. But when you bolt these two things together, now you supercharge some things, and it amplifies somebody's ability to reach their goals dramatically faster.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is crazy. So I don't know what to say next. I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is I already know I've got a lot of stupid 401k accounts still left over. I have my one left at P&G. I've got my one left at Berkshire. I've got my one left at Nike. And those alone. And then I also, yeah, I've even got like a small Roth one. Um, so in theory, I could create a private pension plan for each one of them. And then I could take, let's just say it performs at a 10% market rate. Um, and let's just make it simple math for logic purposes. It's $100,000. So if it's growing
Yep.
at 10%, it gets to up to 110% next year. I can take out 10% of that without facing any penalty, and I can actually move that 10% into paying for that IUL policy you were touching on there, that tax-free retirement account.
No penalty from Athene. Depending on what you were in before and how old you are, there may be a penalty for touching that money early because it was structured as a 401k that you couldn't touch till 59 and a half. So there may be a 10% penalty on that.
Unless it was a
But let's
Roth,
think about
right?
it. But let's look at the one that has a 10% penalty. So let's say I have a 10%
Yep.
penalty for touching it early. Well, is that a terrible thing in itself? Because if I get a 10% penalty, but I move it into an account that will never take a loss, is it safe to say that if I'm 30, 40, 50 years old
Yep.
and I've got 10 years to go before I'm retired, 20 years, 30 years to go before I retire, is it safe to say over the next 10, 20, 30 years, there's going to be at least one 10% drop in the market?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So if I had a 10% penalty, but I eliminated a 10% drop, I'm back to even. Oh,
Sure.
but wait, it's not going to protect you from one 10% drop. It's going to protect you from every 10, 20, 30, 40% drop. So even if I did have to pay the penalty, there's still an
Yeah.
argument to be made to run the numbers and see, was it worth it to tap into the money early to be able to move it into something where I would never take a loss ever again?
And that I think is that why you guys offer like a signing bonus then? Because I think the
Yep.
signing bonuses were like 10, 15% anyways. So in theory, the signing bonus is paying my penalty.
Yeah, and when you say you guys, I don't offer
That's
anything. We just find the right companies. So we go out and what we do is we identify the companies that match. So we're just a platform. We're
okay.
the platform that connects somebody who has a financial goal with the right companies. No one gives us any money. No one can pay us anything. None of their money ever touches our hands. We bring the education. We make sure that the accounts are lined up with the person's goals, make sure they're suitable for that person's needs, and then we just make sure that account gets structured. So if a person has an old Wells Fargo account paying them a tenth of a percent, we help them get a nationwide account paying them 10, 15, 20%. It's still the client's money in the client's new account.
Yeah.
We don't touch that. We're just helping them get the account structured. Well, Kevin, how do you guys get paid? Pretty simple. Those companies have marketing dollars for Super Bowl ads, for click marketing on the internet. They didn't have to spend any of that. We brought them a client. They didn't have to spend a dime.
Huh.
They pay us out of their marketing dollars, never the client's money. So that makes us, we just have a best interest in getting the education out and helping a person make the best possible decision on how they're going to reach their financial goals.
That's super interesting because I mean, many, many moons ago, back in my college days, I actually worked for Northwestern Mutual. And so I used to sell insurance. I drank the company Kool-Aid. I bought myself a whole life policy and all that stuff. And I will tell you, I no longer have that whole life policy because I did 12 straight years paying $2,500, $3,000 of premium. Let's just say $3,000 for simple math. So 12 straight years, I paid $3,000 in premium, so $36,000 in total. And during that time, the stock market went up about 210%. You wanna guess what my cash surrender value on that policy was?
Oh, it must have been like 80, 100, $200,000.
Ah, man, it was $38,000. I made a whopping $2,000 in profit. And so as when I called up my Northwestern Mutual contact, since I was no longer, working there, I asked him, just like, why don't you have these other policies that I'm looking into now? And I am in an IUL now. Thank God I found the light. And I asked him, he's like, well, we don't offer that. Why wouldn't insurance companies offer that? And then how, like, as you mentioned, you were touching on the platforms piece. So then you're not specifically working for any one company. You're more like, I would say, like the Uber that connects drivers to riders. So you can connect insurance companies. Is that how it is?
Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of drivers. We have a whole bunch of cars out there, over 100 different companies that offer these accounts. But there's 1,000 companies, and we're dealing with 100 that offer, not the 1,000 that don't offer. Why would these other companies not offer these? Well, think about it. When an insurance company, so the whole tax benefit of insurance. So 100 years ago, 1913, the government said that life insurance is a benefit to the government.
Yeah.
Meaning, if a husband and wife have life insurance and one of them passes away, that the family left over won't have their hand out for welfare, food stamps, any kind of government assistance, because they have the proceeds from the life insurance. So the government said, this is good. Let's encourage people to do it. So 100 years ago, they said that any money that goes into life insurance will grow tax-free, and you can take it out tax-free as long as you use after-tax dollars to go into it, like we talked about with a Roth IRA, right? So same rules as a Roth IRA. You just have to use an after-tax dollar, and then it will grow tax-free and take it out tax-free. Yeah. It's been around for over 100 years. But they gave this amazing tax benefit to a greedy industry. So the life insurance company, much like the bank, when you put money into the life insurance company was able to take that money and go get any rate of return they could on it. They controlled the faucet of what they would pay out, though. So they could be making 20% on the money and only pay you 3 to 6%. Yeah. So, and you just explained that with your returns in your Northwestern Mutual account. And not to single out any other company, but just that your specific example. Yeah. If inflation's 3% and I'm making 3%, my net is 0. So I will, even if it's better than the bank, if the bank is paying me 0.1% and my whole life policy is paying me 3, 4, 5%, I'm still never going to get ahead financially. Yeah. Long term, just doing that. So as good as the tax benefits were, the life insurance company would suck all the rate of return out of it. 25, almost 30 years ago, they said, wait a second, what if we gave the client control of the center, of the heart of the Tootsie Roll Pop? Remember the Tootsie Pop? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Right? Yeah. So what if we let the client have control of the center of that? What if they could choose an index? They could choose S&P 500, NASDAQ, Eurostock, and whatever those indexes did, contractually, the insurance company had to pay you that rate of return plus any participation rate if there is one from that company. Yeah. So now the client controls how much return they're going to get, not the insurance company. So life insurance was never a good place to grow your money. It was a good place to store it because it was tax-free growth and tax-free distribution. Sure. But you never grow any money. 25 years, almost 30 years ago, the industry said, let's give clients the ability to get the high returns. We'll just make the money on the insurance wrapper, let them make it, because the other kind, the company makes money on the insurance wrapper, plus the company makes all the excess profit on the money.
Yeah.
Let's give all the interest to the client. And a lot of companies hate that idea, as you
They
can
lose
imagine. A
profit.
lot of,
Yeah.
that it
Okay.
gets into their profit model. Some companies are smart enough to say, wait a second, we do this, the clients are going to make a lot more money, we're going to get a whole lot more clients because of it.
Yeah.
So
Huh.
the ability to go help more people, to be able to get that referral business, to be able to actually change someone's financial future, make less per client, but help more clients. We found
Yeah.
out a long time ago, you don't need to make $5 per bag of French fries.
Yeah.
You make 50 cents per bag of French fries, but move millions of French fries. You probably cause lots of heart attacks. That's a terrible analogy. But oh wait, no, you won't, because my heart risk went down eating French fries. By the way, that's a big one too. The salt. Oh, you're eating 95 out of the 100 days I ate French fries. 95 out of 100. 2 meals, at least 2 meals a
Yeah. Yeah.
day. Hash browns in the morning, French fries. I did swap out a couple times apple slices instead of French fries just because people wanted me to online.
Yeah.
But 95 days out of 100. What about the sodium? Didn't your blood pressure go through the roof? 118/70. I've got the blood pressure of a teenager. Turns out when you don't overeat, your body processes everything and gets rid of the excess, and you're fine. Your body can handle it. So anyway, that's
I don't know what to say here, Kevin. I mean, we've been. Let me just check the timer. We've run for like an hour and a half now, and I feel like I could ask you like 20,000 more questions. So I might actually have to schedule a follow up with you here.
I'm more
But
than happy. I love to continue the conversation and love the example you're giving to people. I love the education that you're doing, making sure you're
yeah,
getting this type of information out to people. Really proud of where you are personally, but also your heart for helping others, because there's so much stuff that you're doing aside from just the podcast, aside from the mental health company, aside from you're
yeah,
not just keeping the information for yourself, which so many people do. You're doing everything you can to get the education out, and I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, I don't want people making the same mistake that I've made because I just in this conversation alone, I've recognized that there's numerous mistakes that I can at least stop immediately and get them into something more effective. I guess one big question, because I know I certainly need to take a next step, and maybe as other people watch this in the future, what is like? Do I just immediately qualify for these things? Like, can I just go out and get it, or what's kind of the like? Yes, can I get this or can I not?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So the vehicles that are available, there is a qualification process. Not everyone can qualify to have one.
Okay.
So consequently, that's where that individual conversation. So anyone watching along, just reach out to you and say, hey, I'd like some more information on this. We'll be more than happy to, and then you just let me know who reaches out to you, and we'll be more than happy to follow up
Yeah.
and get them some side-by-side comparisons, show them what their options are. And then if they're like, hey, I do want to continue down that path, then there's a process of just getting the information to those companies. They come back and say what you're qualified for, and we're able to lay that out side by side for someone so they can see what they do qualify for, what percentage they could actually do in different types of accounts, and then they can make an informed side by side decision. If they're on this trajectory now and they can get on this trajectory, they'll be able to see that exactly. They'll have that offer from those companies saying this is what you're actually qualified for. Super
Wow.
simple process,
Wow.
but it is about a 3 to 5 week process to once we get the information to get it off to those companies, and then to come back for them to come back and give us the approval saying here's what you actually are qualified to go ahead and do at that point.
Okay.
And it may be everything they have, it may be a percentage, it may be a small percentage. It's going to be different for each individual, but that's again why it has to be a diagnose and then prescribed conversation.
That is very interesting. Okay. So one, I don't know if I can actually get this. If I can get it, champagne for everyone. But if not, there might be still alternatives I can play around with in the future. Ideally, I just want to go after the Porsche first, since that sounds like it's the best option for me.
And that's where that conversation identifies which things are in your situation the better than what some. Our goal is to dramatically improve someone's situation, whatever
Yeah.
trajectory they're on. We just want to dramatically improve that situation. If in Once you're licensed in this industry, once you're a licensed financial professional, if
Yeah.
you make a recommendation for something that's as good or not as good as what someone's currently doing, that's called churning. You lose your licenses, fines, potential jail time. That means you were writing business just so you could get compensated, not to benefit the client.
Yeah.
You have to improve the client situation, or you have to walk away. And I love that about our industry is that people like Bernie Madoff go to jail for a reason. You
Yeah.
have to improve someone's financial situation. So that's all we ever look at is If someone's doing things and they're already at the best possible, we're just going to give them a high five, keep doing what you're doing. But after that review, if there's something dramatically better than what they're currently doing, we're going to lay
Yeah.
that on the table so they can see what their options are.
No, I like that a lot. And it sounds like you guys, if I can say it for better words, it sounds like you guys are focused on the mission, not the commission, which I think a lot of financial professionals kind of have that flipped the other way. So I like
Well,
that.
that's that five, make 50 cents per bag of French fries versus $5 per bag of French fries. We found out a long time ago, I'd rather make less per client and help a whole lot more clients
Yeah.
versus gouging a few clients. And that's where every other financial advisor is always focusing on getting that next doctor, lawyer, business owner, and everyone's fighting for the same clients. And no one's talking to the 90% who desperately need the help. Just like when I was climbing the corporate ladder, no one talked to me until I got that promotion. Just like these athletes, no one talks to them until they get that signing bonus, but then they don't go back and help their community. They just help that person.
Yeah.
Versus us, we want to take this education and information out and get it out to everybody so they can make intelligent decisions.
Yeah, so that's great. So I actually don't have to be a millionaire. Hell, I don't even have to be making over $100,000 a year to at least get started on the stuff, right?
We don't care if someone starts with $25. You can have $25 million, or you can have $25 you want to put away for your kid's college fund. Have to get the same advice, get the same analysis, get the same recommendations as if you're a multimillionaire.
That's awesome. So this then goes to like where I was talking on earlier of my two favorite professions that I think are the least compensated or rewarded for, teachers and like therapists and clinical social workers. They can actually benefit from this too. It's not just the millionaire. Okay.
Dramatic. So to retire as a millionaire, you don't have to own a McDonald's. You can work at McDonald's and retire a millionaire just by structuring your accounts correctly. It's not about how much you make. It's the difference between what you make and how much we can create a gap. So if my expenses are here, my income's here, I've got a gap. If my income's here and my expenses are here, I got a problem.
Yeah.
So we're all about increasing that gap. So when we do that analysis, we identify, if you go get a fitness professional, you go to the gym, they help you find muscle you didn't know you had, right? You wake up the next morning going, ooh, I didn't even know I had a muscle there. Why is that so sore? But they help you find muscle you didn't know you had, and then they help you build that muscle.
Yeah.
A good financial professional should help you find money you didn't know you had and help you build that money. So some people think, oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I don't need a financial professional. I don't have any excess money. No, that's why you need a financial professional. If you don't have the excess, you need to find someone to help you find the excess and then help you grow that excess. We charge zero, no cost to the client. None of their money ever touches our hands to do that analysis, to help them find that muscle, the money that they didn't even know they had, get them tax breaks, get some debt paid off, etc. So they can think they're living paycheck to paycheck, and yet we can find money they didn't know they had and then start growing that money. And again, if you start where they are, $25 a month, $30 a month, just something. Let's get the habit developed.
Yeah.
And once you have that habit, then we can actually, as we increase someone debt reductions, taxes, etc., we can go ahead and add more to that. Or as they start making more money, we can help them get that habit of getting money working for them instead of them working so hard for their money.
I like that. Okay. Well, I mean, this is fantastic. And thank you again. This is just absolutely incredible. I still could ask another 20 questions. I'm going to have to save this for another date because now my laptop is telling me I've got 5% battery power left and I didn't bring my charger with me. So I'm going to be forced to end this. But so one final question though, Kevin, if people want to get in touch with you, how do you want that? Or do you want them just to contact me and I try and sync you in? Or
just go through you. Yeah, just go through you. That's totally fine. And then I've got over 1,000 licensed agents around the country. So no matter where they are, we have local representation for them. So we'll be able to actually have that conversation and at least get them the information. No obligation, just get the information so you can make those informed decisions going forward. But yeah, just go through you. That'd be the best. Because they already know how to contact you. They know how to find you. They know how to get to your podcast. So going through you would be the best bet.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, you're going to have to come back another time. And next time I'll remember to charge my laptop. But no, Kevin, thank you so much. If I don't talk to you before then, have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's. And thank you again.
Back at you. Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas to all the people following along and watching. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.